Hello, everyone. Nice to be sharing some time with you again. Welcome, Zorka. Welcome, Aman. It's always a pleasure to spend this time and to brainstorm some ideas and to share some options that we have explored in our lives together in probably over a century of experiences all together combined about investigating how we can make our life and hopefully also other people's lives a little easier. Yeah, a little more joyful. I think that's finally the result of making your life easier. If your life is easy, then you're usually a little more joyful. So this is a little bit the purpose of what we are sharing with you once a week. And today we had this idea, talking a little bit that we could possibly do something about transition today. And we were jiggling a little bit about the title, the exact title, and we left it open because we thought that transition is a major topic that appears in many different aspects of life, which we will explore in a little bit in our talk today. And so there is going to be many very different, maybe, we're leaving it open, transition topics, maybe transition 1, transition 2, or different titles about and around transition. So what is transition? Where does it apply in our lives? Where does it show up? Where are we aware of transitions? And where are we not necessarily aware of transitions? Do we take the time to make the appropriate transitions between one activity and the next activity? Are we supported in our daily endeavors to do these transitions, to make these transitions? Are we supported by our boss, by our work, by our social systems when we get into a new activity and when we leave an old activity or something that we completed? So that might be a little bit the debate. I have a few, of course, experiences and things that I would like to share with you guys. But please, you guys first, I want to hear what you have to say about transitions. How are transitions showing up in your life? How do you deal and manage transitions, and how much awareness or what is your understanding about transitions? And whoever wants to start is definitely has the space. Aman, Zorka.
Okay. Why don't you start, Aman? Why don't you start if you feel inspired?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. When you're talking about transition, what I hear from uh, like a man or a woman who has worked whole day in his or her accounting firm or a law office, and now they come home, and before they go to their home, spending time with their partner and spending time with their kids, how they are transitioning from that world to this world, and how they prepare themselves physically, mentally, and emotionally to arrive to that form. That's one thing I hear. Another thing is transition that I think this is globally is happening from before COVID and post COVID transitioning. So it's like a transition, it's happening constantly. And even I remember there was a time that I was in corporate environment, how from one meeting to go to another meeting, I need to prepare myself because over here we're very friendly conversation. Now how I'm gonna get ready for that meeting that it's like a very adversary and fighting environment, how I'm gonna prepare myself for that. And that these are the things I'm hearing. And also one of the things that is, I think, is totally depend on the belief of the person. For me, one of the major transition in life is death. It's like I exist in a physical life, and all of a sudden, for others, I don't exist. That's a huge transition. So that kind of transition also, it comes to my mind. All of it is coming, and I think it's very good subject to talk about it. And there is a lot to look at it. And personally, myself, I can learn a lot out of this conversation. What do you say, Zorka?
Thank you, Aman. I think it's a good way to start this sharing. So Aman gave like an overview of what transition is for him, for you, Aman, and for all of us, of course, because there is one thing that is for sure, that we all gonna go through that transition of dying one day. And I think this is a very, very important one that is probably holding in our society in much fear and disconnection and a lot of stress, because it's probably not addressed the way it used to be in some cultures, at least. And well, that's kind of another parenthesis we could open on this one specifically for another talk. But thank you, Aman, for your sharing. And maybe with this, we could go to Zorka to see what Zorka has to share about transition for her. What does that mean? Where does it appear in her life?
Okay, so just listening to Aman, I had a few things come to me, and again, I'm an energy person, so I always like to address things from an energy perspective because it gives us a different frame of understanding. And so transition, for me, when I heard Aman, I heard the word transit. And when we're traveling and we're in a country or in an airport, well, a little harder today, but there is people that are in transit, which means they don't stop there, but they're in between. They're in between two places. And for me, that says a lot about transition. It's the place between two places. It's the place that allows to go from one place to another, and letting our energy reorganize, let go and unwind of what we just left behind, and then kind of reconnect to some next piece that we're going to. So that for me is a really nice way of looking at it. And yeah, transitions for me feel very important. And you're talking about the transition from a state of being in a physical body to a state of like leaving the physical body. But when a woman gives birth, there is a one of the stage of birth that is called transition. So just to remember also that that entry into the physical world is also has its transition. So yeah, it's fascinating to see where our vocabulary, our words, how we name things without being aware of it already teach us a lot if we start to become conscious and start to listen without with more presence and attention, because most of the time we use things and words as a habit. And for me also, making conscious transitions help us to come out of habits. So yeah, that's a little bit to start with.
Oh, thank you, Zorka. That's beautiful. Yeah. So I'm going to also give my little minute or two about what transition is for me, where it shows up, and how important it feels to be aware and conscious, and to, for me, mostly take the time and the space, give it the time and the space for transition, because I think that's one of the keys when we relate to transition. But first, where does it appear? How does it appear in my life? I mean, I'm a person who very gladly, and this is a clear choice, for many, many years now to do many different things. I'm not a one type activity person. That's just the way I am. And I'm well grateful for that because that's what I chose and it satisfies me today, still very much. So transitioning from one activity to the other, just to give you a sense, I mean, sometimes I do some construction work, I'm on the roof, and like literally like 10 minutes later, I'm teaching a yoga class. That's one example, right? Very simple. And so for me, the time to be on the roof and gather my tools, go down the ladder, keep everything clean again, because that's what I did before. And when I finish something, I like to leave the space clean. That's also part of transition, to not leave any mess. When I'm transitioning physically from one place to another, I'm finishing a campground, I'm not leaving nothing there because just maybe some footprints, but it's the idea of finishing something. And then what do I do next? Okay, I'm gonna go from the roof to the yoga class. And for me, it is absolutely crucial to be aware of that transition. Because if I'm in the same mode of being like physical and really just organizing a frame and doing construction work, it is definitely a very different energy than teaching a yoga class. And to get into the yoga class, I need that time that I realized for me now is more important to have consciousness than a lot of time. Because if I would need half an hour to do the transition, something would be squeezed in my life, and I cannot allow this amount of time to do the transition. But if I'm very aware, which is something I practiced for a while, I realize in 1 minute, I can do a perfect transition. And it is crucial to do it. And that's just one specific example, but with the multiple activities that I have. And I think without even having multiple activities, when you get into your car, you need to be aware that there is many other cars on the road, that there is pedestrians, bicycles, motorcycles, and many other things that you need to be aware of. It's not the same to be driving your car than if you just walk, or if you ride a bicycle, or if you just sit on a chair. Of course, it's very different. And I think for me, in resume, to finish with this first little round, I think the transition is between every different activity. If I take a drill when I do some construction work and I take a saw, it changed the tool. I'm still in construction work, but this is a very different activity, to drill or to be sawing something, very different activity. And then already I need to do that transition consciously to know exactly that now I'm going to be sawing, my fingers are at risk. So I need to be very clear that I'm changing the tool. And I think this is a little bit how could I say that? What comes up for me about the importance of transitions.
Actually, that's brilliant, Daniel, because many accidents is happening because of that. And these days, especially people with a cell phone on their ear, or these pods in their ears and cell phone in their pocket, they go through, they are running, they are working out, they are driving, and they are going from one conversation to another conversation, and also different action. And unfortunately, body, mind, and emotion are not in the same place. And that causes lots of accidents. Mm-hmm. An accident is not only physical accident of two cars, or I cut my finger. Sometimes I take the conversation on a wrong way. So now all of a sudden it creates a big conflict with my business partner. Actually, this happened to me with somebody that I was working with them. I was teaching addiction recovery people. There was some private homes that they have about 15, 20 people in each home, and they were going through the process of addiction recovery, and I was teaching them. Then inside my communication with the owner of several of these houses, the text that we sent back and forth completely, he took it wrong, I took it wrong, and all of a sudden I stopped my services for them because it was a misunderstanding. Very simple, because none of us were in that space to write that text correctly and to read that text correctly. So all of a sudden it was a misunderstanding, and this had a huge impact, financial impact for myself, and impact on the people who were receiving the service. I couldn't continue that. So it was very big mess because I was not aware enough to, at that moment when I was responding to the text that he sent. So, and then I said it certain way that he took it wrong way. So these are the things that is constantly is happening. I want to mention one more thing before we go to Zorka. It was 2007 and 8 that with the two American partners, we start a wellness center. And by 2008, we already spent so much money, and we set up this place and so on. Big place, about 6,000 square feet. And we had a plan to have like some kind of a wellness center on the base of integrative approach. Yeah, approach to, and bring all different modalities to healing.
Right.
What happened at that time, we were going through this 2008 collapse, financial collapse, and no bank was giving any loan. And the way that we spent our money, we were short on money and we should get the loan. Now, what happened, the business went down and we walk out with a big loss, okay? Now, the transition for me, having a business and then losing a business and get complete with this loss and move on to my life, instead of I go for 3 months, instead of go 6 months, instead of go for a year, I resist to accept my mistake and look at that. So it took me over 5 to 7 years. That delayed whatever I want to do it for the rest of those, because if I could be complete and do that transition fully, completely the same way you said, cleanly, that you put that drill on the side and take the saw, if I was doing the same thing in that process for myself in relation to that business, my future was opening up. And the same thing is happening with the people that they go through separation or divorce. And instead of going through this process with a clean slate, they bring some stuff with themselves to the next one and to the next one and pay a big price. And I think
So a very simple question that pops up for me right away with your sharing, Aman, is that transition is also very equivalent to completion. To make a transition, you need to complete something, to feel complete, wherever you left it, right? What you did, because of course, I mean, when you work in construction, it's you have not finished completely something. You need to do something else, and then you come back, and then it all moves together. But so the word completion is a key in transitioning, right? Completing what you have done before, being aware of how you're going to move next, because this is what I perceive from when you said the email that I shared, that I sent, was not properly like conceived with the time and consciousness for the next piece. So the completion one side, and then how do you project yourself being present for what's next? Would that kind of like bring it home for what you said?
Yeah, it is. The way I see it is like, first be present to myself. physically, mentally, emotionally, be present at that moment.
Right.
And be present to what I am involved. Now it could be a small project like a cooking food. Or I'm not saying cooking food is a small, but I mean more the steps are smaller, or a big project like completing a company or a business. Right. Both of them, first I need to be present to my body, mind, and emotion. But many times we are not present even here. So first, being present. The second, being present with what's so, whatever is out there. And then be present to my relationship with this, what's so. If I'm pissed at it, I cannot go to the next step. I need to clean up. Exactly. Like if I'm a painter and my brushes are dirty, I need to clean it before I put it in another color.
You're right.
That time being complete over here, first being complete with myself. I'm totally present here, and then in that relationship with what was happening over there. Because many times, in the case of that business, for a long time, I didn't want to accept what was there. So I was not relating to what so easily. And the reason I couldn't relate to what so easily with what is there was over here, because I was not happy with failure or with the mistakes I did. So first I need to get clear over here, get complete, and then have a healthy relationship with this, and then go to the next step. And the funny part of it, that many of us, we do, without completing on this one, we go to another relationship. Guess what? We go down again. Why? Because I'm not present to here. I'm not present with what is happening, and bring my incompletion to the next one, to the next one.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So, you know what comes to me again, I'm sorry, Zorka, I'm definitely going to give you some space in a second. But what comes to me is very much the principle of, when you say being complete, is also meaning or feeling to me that you probably talk about coming back to a neutral place. Because when we are excited and we are emotional and involved in projects, of course, we need to put some energy. Then our emotions go up, whatever they are, joy, any emotions, anyone. But to complete something, I think, I mean, what right is that it's maybe a different way of sharing it. But yeah, ideally, you want to come to a place of neutral again, because it's completed. You're not wired up with the old stuff. And emotional, because your emotions are driven. You want to come to a place where your emotions come down. You feel okay with what happens, whatever happens. Sometimes it was not ideal in your mind, but finding the place where you feel at peace, again, neutral. And then from that place, you can enter the next project with all access to all the directions. Because if you're polarized somewhere and you're torn somewhere, you cannot bring your full energy into the next project. So that's maybe another way of saying, I mean, but it's thank you, Aman. That was very inspiring what you shared. Thank you. Yeah. So now, I mean, we definitely owe both of us guys, right? We know some space. We owe some space to Zorka for her feminine input about transition, and what Zorka is going to share with us about her way and her little tricks to cope and manage and be happy with transitions. The space is yours, Zorka.
All right, that was a lot of information.
Oh. Indeed.
I hope you all guys, I mean, that are listening, take a good breath so you can transition from all this information to be able to really take it in and let go of what needs to let go, and also be nourished by what is interesting to you, so that you can integrate and assimilate some of it, so you can build on that. And if you don't understand or get everything that was said, it's okay, because it will come. And for me, I mean, I'm just experiencing the transition now into a different um, speed of of talking and energy and breathing. Slowing down really helps for me to make those transitions. Because, as you said, Daniel, I mean, transition is about having some neutrality so we can move from one quality of energy to another quality of energy. That if we don't leave that space of neutrality, might become quite messy for us and others too, by the way. And we might get confused because we're unable to know really what we are in because we're taking with us what was before.
Mm.
So it's almost like, when we like stirs the bottom of a pond, there's a lot of things coming in the water and it's all like you don't see very clearly. And then there is a time where the transition time for me would be the time we leave for these things to come down again so we can see through the water again, and also all the things that have come onto the ground have come into a different place. That's another way of looking at it. And yeah, another angle to just experience it. So at this point I feel like I'm a little more grounded and I see a little more clearly after all this energy being stirred up, and all these ideas and inputs. There was a lot of inputs from you both. um, so I would like to finish with something simple maybe. And you've talked about presence and completion, and how we need to complete in ourselves to and be present to be able to transition. And I want to give the other side of it, which is practicing transitions in a conscious way will help us to complete and be present. It goes both ways, and it's a little simpler because it's
Mm.
practice and it's a structure.
So tell us about practicing transition. I'm eager to hear how you practice transition, how uh, how how the female like archetype of this world is practicing transitions. How do you
Okay.
do that?
So I would say, and I won't be too long because I know we've gone quite a bit today. So for me, when I become aware of something, stopping myself and just taking a breath, just pattern interruption, which means whenever I become aware of something, I stop and I go, okay. So I become aware, and that's also practicing observation.
Mm.
But it's not putting any pressure on myself. It's like whenever I become aware of something, oh, let's just stop and just see and become present really fully to what I became aware of. And so it doesn't put any pressure on myself, because putting pressure, we know that, and Aman has taught us that 26 years ago, like pushing ourselves and wanting to do 2 hours of practice, it's not going to work for very long. And Dr. Stone, actually, who was the person who synthesized polarity, said the same thing: effort without effort, otherwise we won't do it for so long. And so, not pressuring ourselves to have a certain result, but practicing with joy and with pleasure, and noticing when we just haven't, and that's good. So whenever I can catch it, I like to stop and use that opportunity to become more present and to observe and to become more informed and aware of what's happening. So that's what I would like to leave you with for today, so you get pleasure
Mm.
and joy in your practice.
Mm. Oh, thank you, Zorka. Yeah, so observation and no judgment. This is the key to just see what happened. Okay, I was able to do this. This is the situation. That's how things are. And now at the moment, I'm going to do something else. So I'm going to find my peace with breathing, taking some space, taking a moment, right? Just taking a little moment to have that capacity to take a few breaths. And then to let it come down, and then naturally by just allowing yourself that time and space is already gonna like settle what was before, and then it's gonna bring you to this neutral place somehow, more likely at least, and then you can do the next steps for what's next, right? I mean, something that came to me, like, I think it's while Aman was sharing at the beginning, a little example that I wanted to share. When you stumble and you fall down while you walk, I'm talking about, any one of us. I mean, I think probably every single person that I've ever come across this planet, kids or adults, of course, have one time or several times fallen while they were walking, while they were running, while they were somewhere doing something. And I can say, at least in my experience, 100% of the times, it's because my mind was somewhere else. I was not present. I was not where my feet were. I thought, oh, I'm going to go there to do this, and I was already in that other room thinking about what I was going to do there. My mind was projected, and I did not do the transition of, okay, I'm in this room. I'm going to put my next foot right here, and then I'm going to walk over safely. No, my mind was over there, and I was not completing where I was. I was not aware of where I was. And so that made me fall. And I think for most cases when people stumble and they sometimes, I mean, even injure themselves, it's because their minds are somewhere else. They're not in that place here and now, and completing, okay, I'm here, and now the next step is that. It's just already the next step before having completed the other thing. And maybe one more thing that I want to share that really comes from some beautiful Native American, I would say, wise people, men and female that have shared, I would say, inspirators in our life that I'm so grateful for. They said in their traditions, when you complete something, whatever that is, you go through the 4 directions, right? All the 4 directions, you go through the elements. And when you finish something, it is very important to come to the place, the northern door in some traditions, to do the completion of what was done. Take the time to acknowledge it, to be thankful for everything, and to celebrate. Even if it's a minute or 2, but this symbolically is the conscious transition in their traditions, and they really do that with seasons, with day, with night. When they go to bed, they make a conscious transition. And I think this is a little inspiration for us that are not so connected to these directions, elements, and transition precisely in our societies, because we are very demanded all the time, and 5 things on the schedule and running from one thing to another. And yeah, I would just suggest to all the listeners, every one of you, and of us as well, because it's a good reminder. Sometimes we also like are a little stingy on transition time and space. So to make these transitions in consciousness with time, space, and I think it's important now to do the transition between everything we shared and the end of this video in gratitude, in consciousness. Thank you, Zorka. Thank you, Aman. And we're really looking forward to seeing you next week for another topic, and wishing you a wonderful time. Till next time. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.